Welcome everyone to Early Literacy and Speech Development in Storytime. This is our first presentation this afternoon for the Kayak Conference, and we welcome Megan and Kelly. Please take it away.
All right, thank you. I'm Kelly. I'm over here. I don't know if you guys can see me. And I'm Megan Polasic. And we're just going to scroll right through here. All right, so this is just kind of a little bit about ourselves. So I am the supervisor of Brunswick Library, which is a branch of the Medina County District Library in Medina County, which is like Northeast Ohio. We're about 45 minutes from downtown Cleveland. So my department serves births to grade 5, and I have a 2.5-year-old now, and a 7-year-old. And my 7-year-old actually went through speech with Megan here. That's how we met. So when she was 2, she was diagnosed with a speech delay, and Megan came to my house, and we worked on building up her speech, and she's doing great now. She's not in speech at all. And that's kind of where this presentation was born, really. I mean, I guess it's that.
And our friendship.
And our friendship now, yeah.
I'm Megan Polasic. I am a certified speech language pathologist, and I work in early intervention for Medina County. I think in Kentucky, your early intervention program is called First Steps, and ours is called Help Me Grow, kind of. But I'm just going to be referring to it as early intervention throughout the presentation. I've been a practicing SLP for 15 years, mostly in early intervention, and I have a 7-year-old daughter and a husband and a dog at home.
All right, so the agenda for today's presentation, I'm just gonna preface this by saying there is a ton of information on every slide. We will not be reading everything word for word, but since this is virtual, I wanted to make sure that all the info is there so you don't have to furiously write every single thing we're saying, and you can refer back to it whenever you want. So ton of info on the slides. So we're going to talk a lot about early intervention. That's what Megan does, and like she said, it's called First Steps in Kentucky. We're going to talk about speech delays and the CDC milestones for communication. We're going to talk about partnerships that my branch has done to support the community and really any kind of developmental delays that might be out there. And then we're going to go through each age level and talk about story time tricks for each one and speech development for each age. So we're going to do babies, toddlers, preschoolers, and then we'll have a slide on all ages too, because I know a lot of us do all ages story times in addition to the breakdown of baby and toddler.
So this is about your First Steps program that you have in Kentucky. And again, that's your early intervention program. Early intervention it's a statewide program that provides services for children ages 0 through 3. I am not from Kentucky, so this is as much information as I could find from talking to colleagues and looking up the program online. It's a volunteer program. It's paid for by a combination of tax dollars and Medicaid and private insurance. So most families do not have to pay out of pocket. So if you were to talk to a family about being in First Steps, you can reassure them that most of the time people do not have to pay anything if they were interested in looking into that further. And we evaluate children in all areas of the development to make sure that kind of everything's on par or see where there might be some delays going on. Those phone numbers on there are for making referrals to First Steps, and also that's the website there for your First Steps program. This is just a little bit about speech and language kind of in general. A lot of times when people talk about speech or my child is delayed in speech, we ask a little bit of follow-up questions and talk about what is really going on and finding out the pieces and parts. So speech or communication is comprised of 2 parts. There's receptive communication, which is how much you understand and how much you show other people that you understand, like by following directions and understanding what's said to you. And then there's your expressive communication, which is the message that you say or the gestures that you use to convey a message to someone else. Your receptive language, or that blue kind of bar in there, your receptive language is always going to be higher than your expressive language, even as adults, because you are able to understand sometimes a little bit more than you would say in an output. And then speech, if we're talking about just strictly speech is how you say sounds and words. So that's the articulation, the specific sounds that you say. You know, if someone were to say to you that their child doesn't talk, they're likely talking about an expressive language disorder, that their kid isn't saying maybe as many words as other kids. But just so you know kind of the pieces and parts that go into communication. And then I don't know how many of you follow the CDC or, you know, keep up with their milestones, but last year they had gone through and updated their milestones. They have a really nice milestone tracker. There's an app that people can use, but a really nice system for parents and caregivers and people to be able to look at different ages, you know, at 2 months, at 4 months, at 12 months, at 15 months. What are the different skills that my child should be able to do, and what are they expected to do? They did update that last year, and there's a little bit of a discrepancy in terms of the communication piece of what I myself might expect a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old to be able to do versus what the CDC has on there. So the discrepancy is that their expectations were maybe a little bit lower than what I would expect a child to be able to do, even with a 75% delay. But just know that when we're looking at communication things, a lot of times we look at a bunch of different information from different places, and that sometimes those milestones, especially in those early years, the 1 and 2-year-olds, the milestones aren't always a steadfast, like this is the milestone that you have to have kind of thing. There's usually a range of, you know, how many words they can say or when they should be walking. There's usually a bit of a range, so it's not a hard, fast rule kind of thing. But the CDC milestones is a nice tool for people to be able to use. And then this slide, Kelly and I were talking about all the speech things that we talk about, and I said, okay, like as a librarian, you don't necessarily need to know the specific milestones or the specific breakdown of like the speech sounds kids should be able to use. That's not something that needs to be like right off the top of your head. But if you're doing story times and parents are talking about their kids' speech, and, you know, or maybe you're interacting with children, at 18 months, I would expect a non-familiar listener as yourself to be able to understand some of what the child can say. They would probably have, you know, 10 to 50 words at about 18 months, and you're going to understand some of that. At 2 years and throughout their second year, I would expect you to be able to understand about half of what the child says. Again, you're an unfamiliar listener, and so some of those speech sounds are not going to be used you know, appropriately in words, but you can understand some of what they're saying. By the time kids are 3 years and they're moving into their 4th year, you can understand most of what they're saying. And then when they're about 4 years and above, so that preschool age, you should be able to understand almost all of what they say. Not necessarily everything, but almost all of it.
So when we first started putting this presentation together, it was right after the pandemic. And one of the things that I talked a lot about with Megan was these kinds of questions that I was getting in the library when people were starting to come back to story time. We were still wearing masks. We were still just starting story time again, still social distancing. And I had a lot of these comments. So you can kind of like scan through, and you can definitely put in the comments if you want, like if you've had these kinds of comments or questions before. Anything similar to this that you've run into. There is a link on here. It's not going to work through here, but News Channel 5, which is like our big news station in Cleveland, actually came to our library because they were very interested in how people were adapting after the pandemic, because we had a lot of new families coming in and they were saying these things and they were asking us if the pandemic caused it, and we can't say that. We're just librarians, but it was a very interesting time, I would say. a lot of those comments about masks, like, and my staff was very uncomfortable. Like they were like, if I wear a mask, is that going to hinder their, you know, enjoyment or development during the story time?
And I'm sure that's one of the things that you guys remember, and maybe you're still doing too, is people talking about masks and how that's going to affect not only your story time, but child's, you know, communication development and all that kind of stuff. So we had talked about, did the pandemic cause the speech delays or possible speech delays? The short answer is that we don't know. Every family situation is unique. Research is still being conducted. The important part is that we're meeting families where they are right now and then moving forward, no matter what caused or may not have caused what's going on with the child. So there was a study done about a year ago that showed delayed pointing and first words and waving in children that were born in that first year of the pandemic. But then it also went on to say that they don't expect these delays to be long-term, and that children's brains are pretty malleable, pretty plastic, and able to adapt and move on and learn those things. As far as Ohio, our early intervention numbers have been steadily increasing for years, even before the pandemic. And my guess is that Kentucky's have been as well, just with early intervention kind of being more public and people talking about things like that a little bit more and being more aware. There's always been kids who have had like minimal peer interactions until preschool or even kindergarten. And so that's one of the things that we look at when we're looking at children who are ages 2 and above. How much peer interaction are they getting? Are they able to communicate with their peers as well as adults? And just know that if you are wearing a mask, or if you have worn a mask in the past, and maybe you will again, wearing a mask for a 30-minute or 45-minute story time is not going to negatively affect a child's development. It's a short-term kind of thing. And especially for those infants and toddlers, you're not their primary caregiver. So they might not even be paying too much attention to you. They're going to be looking at their parent and watching their parent's mouth movements and all of that interaction. So just know that it's okay to wear masks even when you're doing story time.
Your eyes are very expressive.
Yes, for sure. And so one of the things that we talked about too was, what can librarians say to caregivers if a caregiver asks about a child's development? And I'm sure you guys have had questions or had the grandparents come up and say, so-and-so, isn't doing as much, or what can we do? I always tell people, and I encourage other people to say, your child best, or your grandchild best, or you're, going to be their caregiver. If you have a concern about their development, you can talk to their pediatrician or contact the early intervention program on your own. There's some milestones that you can look over, and the CDC website has some nice milestones for people to look for as well, but kind of guiding them to those different spaces where they can find some of that stuff out on their own. You don't need a doctor's referral. Anybody can refer to early intervention, so they don't have to talk to the pediatrician, but they can if they're comfortable with that. And I always tell people too, if they're thinking about getting an evaluation, that you can get an evaluation. It's likely going to be free, and there can be 2 outcomes from it. One, your child doesn't qualify. They're fine with all of their skills, and you've spent a couple of hours on some paperwork and some phone calls, but now you can sleep better knowing that your child doesn't need any services and they're doing fine, and then you don't have to worry anymore. Or the other outcome could be that your child does qualify for some services, and you can start those services as soon as possible. And again, you're not losing sleep over wondering, does my child have a delay? Do we need to do something about it? You've taken that step to do something about it, and now you can move forward from there.
All right, so some of the things that my department did to kind of help build on this was, we had Megan several times now has come out to just our regular times, and she'll just be kind of a guest at the end. So a lot of times we'll just do the story time, and then, or at the beginning of the story time, we'll have Megan introduce herself and just say she's here if anybody has any questions about speech or development or anything about early intervention, and then they can approach her afterwards. And usually you do have people talk to you afterwards.
Yes, usually a couple.
So very low key. We don't make it into a whole separate event. You can, but ours has been just kind of blending it in with what we already offer. Any type of early steps flyers that you have, and if you don't have them, try to get them, put them in your play spaces anywhere that the families are going. You can invite an SLP like Megan or whoever else in your county to come out and just talk at a staff meeting. That was really helpful for us. She came out and really eased my staff's concerns when we were kind of in the thick of the pandemic. And then, yes, if you've heard of Miss Rachel, who is very famous on TikTok for her speech, what would we call it? She's not a speech pathologist.
No, but she has speech pathologists on her team.
Yeah.
I don't know, like a because she's on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
Right? Just has videos of different interactions.
I would recommend watching some of her videos because she really does do a nice job.
Yeah.
With
And
those
watching them
motions.
for the idea of your staff, you know, keeping the idea that when you're talking to infants and toddlers, sometimes you have to up your game a little bit when you're talking with them, and do the big eyes and do the like, look at my mouth, and really make it big.
Yeah. On the left-hand side of this slide, there is a list of other organizations, places that you could reach out to kind of build these partnerships as well. Okay. One thing that we ended up doing here in Medina County was create what we call caregiver kits. So Medina County does not have a birthing center. So if you want to deliver babies, you have to go outside of our county. So the big question is, well, how do our Medina County families get these free resources, like from the health department or from the library or early intervention? How do they find out about it if they're delivering in a whole nother county that offers different services? So we came up with these caregiver kits where we stuff a bunch of these flyers. We have cute little baby bibs in there. We have shakers in there too, and just all kinds of freebies from our local agencies. So these have been really nice to be able to give out, especially after the pandemic when we weren't having as much like one-on-one interaction. We could give them a caregiver kit and they could take these resources home. There is a cost. We've been lucky that we've been able to get a lot of donations for this from like the health department and early intervention. So like they've bought books, you know, you've seen this one, there's Llama Llama Nighty Night. The library has funded a portion of it as well, but you could do something similar even if you didn't have that much money. Okay, so now we're going to get into the fun part, which is actually kind of going through story time and giving all kinds of tips and books and wonderful things. But first, this is important. But first, we need to talk about nursery rhymes, because nursery rhymes, as I have listed in here, are the Rainbow Connection, Librarians, and SLPs. They're magical. Those are my two kids on the right-hand side. If you're wondering, all these pictures of babies and things, it's either my kid or Megan's kid or kids from the library. So we got to talk about nursery rhymes. So why are they wonderful for speech? A million reasons.
Yeah.
Fun, nostalgia. That's always, you know, something. Not the number one reason, but a lot of times the families who are coming in may be familiar with some of the nursery rhymes. We have a nursery rhyme flip chart that we use as well. That's in pretty big font for the families who don't know the rhyme. You want to talk about movement?
Sure.
Yeah.
The movements and the gestures that are incorporated with a lot of nursery rhymes are really important for that communication piece. So before kids are able to sing along with London Bridge or sing along with something like Wheels on the Bus, those gestures can help them participate and hopefully kind of keep them in the song a little bit longer, because they have a way of participating that's not just passively listening while someone's doing it. And they're fun. You can make them fun, and you can make up whatever gestures you want for things.
Yeah. A lot of these tips in here, so teaching rhythm, breaking down syllables. If you guys are doing early literacy based story times, you might be saying these tips in story time already. You might be familiar with them. Lisa Loeb Nursery Rhyme Parade, if you can get that on Amazon Music, or it might be on Apple Music too. Like, that is the gold mine for nursery rhymes. Yeah. Her voice is so lovely, and they're not annoying songs. They're very, very nice to listen to. And then we do mention Coco Melon here. We have to mention Coco
Yes,
Melon.
We have to mention Coco Melon. If you don't know what Coco Melon is, again, it's a YouTube kind of video or series of videos that does do some nursery rhymes, but they're also very, very bright, very flashy, and kind of very addictive for kids. As we know, kids can be a little bit, can get a little addicted to screens in general. But Coco Melon and the little baby JJ, who is kind of the main character, they're doing them as a video is not necessarily needed when you're teaching nursery rhymes. You really want nursery rhymes to be about the movements and about the rhyme schemes and about the interaction with somebody else, and not about passively watching a video. So no need for Coco Melon. There's many other places to get nursery rhymes from, such as Lisa Loeb. We don't know her. We're not promoting her. We just really like her music. But any other place that you can find, or, you can just sing it yourself.
All right, so this is when we're going to get into the nitty gritty here. So for each age group, we're going to go through the communication skills, and then we're going to go through how to support that in a story time setting.
So those birth to 3 months, that first year of life, communication, different skills in those age ranges. So turning a head toward a sound, responding to voices, watching voices. As children are getting a little bit older, they might start to babble and make some of those sounds. They respond to their name a little bit more, so they're learning what their name is, responding, like showing understanding of some words and phrases. And then as they're getting to almost a year old, they should be starting to point to things, maybe doing a little bit of gestures. The gestures are going to be really loosey-goosey. They're not going to be like itsy bitsy spider, but they might like something like this, and imitating actions and songs. So you can start those kinds of things with a baby story time, but as we'll talk about in a little bit, you might want to encourage the caregivers to be the one to do some of those gestures with their kid and not just rely on you in the front of the room or wherever you are.
Ooh, yes, I love that. Okay, so I have a hot tip for each age group. So the hot tip for this one is all about you modeling for the caregiver, which you guys know, this is what you're doing in story time anyways. This is an amazing thing that Megan brought up that like blew my mind. She said that the caregivers need to be face-to-face with the baby versus the baby facing us. So when you're doing like a lap jog or a rhyme or something, like tell the parents to turn the baby around because the baby can't see you. Like there's just no way. No matter how like baby's development, it's not going to work here, but there is a YouTube that shows like baby's eye development through that first year. Just blew my mind. So when you're doing the rhyme, make sure that the parent is facing the child. And then when we're picking books for baby story time, we are going to be looking at the pictures. We want really simple titles. Children who are learning to talk are learning how to connect what they see with the sounds and words they hear. So choose an intro song if you can. If your baby story times are wild and crazy and you have like 40 babies in there, I don't recommend doing this because you'll run out of breath like I've done before. But if you have a smaller group, you can do anything that includes the baby's name since they're starting to recognize that. And I have a link in here to the Choo Choo song. I think that's a Jayberry link, but the Choo Choo song is just choo 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 going up the track. Choo 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 choo. Then we come right back, and then we go. First we go to Megan's house, and then we go to Kelly's house. Then we go to Lauren's house, and then we come right back. So anything like that. Okay, so here's a list of some lap bounces that we really like to do for baby story time. Smooth Road to London Town, tick tock, I'm a little goo clock. That's a really fun one. Books, any books that have babies' faces on them. I think we have some examples over here. Anything by Karen Katz is usually amazing, or Selena Yoon with her Do Cows Meow. Tummy Time Friends. The big thing with the baby story time is you're going to be engaging with the book. You're not going to be just focusing on the words.
Yeah.
And they don't care about the words.
And we even put on here like puppets. You can try things with puppets. Again, it's going to depend on the size of your group, because ideally we would want, especially for those lap bounces or those gestures, we want the parent to be facing the child. But then when you're reading a book, not everybody's going to have a copy of that. So trying to get closer if you can, or holding it up really high, obviously. But even puppets can be really engaging. And again, like turn on your Miss Rachel is what I like to say to people sometimes, but turn on your big enthusiastic kind of face.
And I only use puppets for pretty much animal sounds. I can't do like puppets like talking to me and all that. Like I just use them for animal sounds.
Yeah. So Lauren, this is that time where I'm going to be like showing and sharing a little bit of a book. And we're going to do that for each of the sections. So I think she's going to, I think it'll work okay.
Do you want me to go ahead and stop the share, and then we'll just restart the share after you're done?
Yep, if you can do that. We're going to do this for like a minute and a half, and then we're going to do some more slides, and we'll come back and do this again for each section. So hopefully everybody can see this. we had grabbed just a couple of books that might be appropriate for like a 0 to 12-month-old story time. This one, I Am a Baby. Again, you would talk about the title, but then when you open it up, you know, you don't have to read the words that are on the page. You can just say, look, there's a baby. And I turn on my voice really high, you know, kind of that, we would call it parentese, where you're raising the pitch of your voice and getting that really engaging sound. Ooh, that baby's in their bed. I'm going to say bed instead of crib because they're a baby. Look, that baby's sitting in their high chair. They look hungry. They're going to eat. Yum, 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 yum. So when I'm doing things with kids for communication purposes, I'm not necessarily going to be reading the words. The kids can't read the words anyway, but I'm going to be looking at what's on the page and engaging with that picture because that's what they can see. That's what they're likely going to be interested in. Oh, that baby has a diaper and he doesn't have a shirt on. Oh no, he's probably cold. And look, that baby has some clothes. You know, he has a shirt and has stripes on it. So you're just kind of talking about the pictures that you see on the page and moving along that way.
You're not reading it word for word.
Not reading it word for word. This one is Peekaboo by Roberta Grobel Intrader. I don't know. But this is Peekaboo, Who Are You? And sometimes, a lot of times actually, if I have a book that has flaps on it, I'm going to go knock, 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 knock. Oh, let's open it. There she is. She was hiding from you. There's that baby. And then we're going to close the page. Peekaboo. Achoo. Oh no, she has a cold. Knock, knock, knock. Let's open. Oh, are you sneezy too? And just really talking about that page. You can kind of get a gist of what the words are, but you don't have to say every single one.
Yeah.
Lauren, we're going to present back and do some more slides for a minute.
And you guys, if you want, you can put in the chat like any recommendations for great baby time books, songs, rhymes, anything.
Yeah,
love sharing.
Thank you so much, Lauren. So this slide right here just has a kind of a breakdown of all those communication skills.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's get into the almost toddlers.
Yeah, this is probably, this group and the next group are probably going to be your biggest groups for your library story times, I think. So between 12 and 18 months is when kids are really learning those beginning words. They're using a lot of single words, they're using a lot of people names, and they're starting to follow some directions. Body parts can be a really great thing to talk about and to practice in some of those story times, and answering some simple questions. What's that? Who is that? Where are they going?
Yeah, so for the 12, so again, lots of information on this slide. The hot tip for this is it's all about the child imitating the caregiver. So we need to show them what we want them to do. I have in here using exclamatory words. So, I mean, so many of our picture books have these like pop, snap, wee, yucky, honk, beep, uh-oh. There's a nice little speech quote here. These fun words and sounds are often the first words children imitate and say. We also have bubbles at the end of all of our story times. So we've added in that kind of pop. Can you pop a bubble? Can you clap a bubble? Can you stomp on the bubble? And going further with the imitation. So teaching yes and no, being very dramatic about that. And I really like this little quote too about Megan was bringing up, you know, when we do body part songs. She mentioned like usually we teach them eyes, nose, mouth first, but it's interesting because they can't see it. So how are they supposed to know what they're pointing to?
Yeah.
So what do you recommend?
I usually talk to parents and families about doing body parts that the child can see on themselves. So doing hands, doing arms, doing feet or bellies. Lift up your shirt and show you their belly. You can do hair, like even though they can't necessarily see their own hair, it's a nice big gesture and you can see other people's hair too. But sometimes those specific really, especially like face ones, eyes, nose, mouth, even ears, can be tricky for little ones to learn at first because they can't see them on themselves and you often get poked in the eye. If you're trying to do eyes, they poke themselves in the eye. There's a lot of stuff going on. So start with bigger ones.
All right, and then here we go. We just got some more songs, rhymes, lap jogs, books, repetitive books with real pictures. opposites like yummy, yucky, or no, yes. And the bonus tip here is, this is good. Toddlers are not going to instinctively listen to you as a storytime leader because it's so new to them. That's why the parents need to be engaged and to do it with you.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many parents I've gone to their homes and we've been working on different kinds of things, and I've suggested, like, have you gone to story time, or do you want to go? And they'll say, oh, we went once and my child didn't sit, and so we're never going again, or we're not going to go again because he was running around and he wouldn't sit still, or I have the baby with me and I can't go at his time because I have the baby with me. And so I've always told them, like, try it again. It's their first experience in kind of a group organized kind of thing, especially if they're a kid who doesn't regularly go to a daycare or a church group or anything like that. So they've got to learn. So Lauren, we're gonna share a couple books again right here. So if we can take that down. That's funny that we have this book as the one listed for this area, because I actually had put it in my pile for the next age group, because this book can be used, these Leslie Patricelli books can be used for a bunch of different toddler kind of ages. But this one is so nice because it really doesn't have any words in it except for no, no, yes, yes. I had to figure out which one was on which side. So, but you can, again, talk about the pictures and do that really big exaggerated. Uh-oh, what's he doing? He's coloring on the wall. And we say, no, no. And really turn your head and encourage the kids to turn their head, even if they aren't saying it with you. We can color on paper. Yes. Yes is a really big thing to teach those 1-year-olds going into 2-year-olds. A lot of kids, no is an early word because we tell kids no a lot. It's a really powerful word, but oftentimes they don't pick up on yes as quickly. It's kind of it comes a little bit later. And personally, professionally, I think it's because we often don't tell kids yes, but we also don't model yes a whole lot. We might be like, yeah, but we don't do this along with it. So a book like this really teaches, I'm not thinking about it as an opposite, but it teaches that, these are things that we can do. Yeah, we can blow our nose with it. We don't have to pick our nose. Ew, no. So going through like that with that book, and even some of the other books that I had, there's going to be a lot of animal books likely. This is Animal Moves. There's going to be a lot of animal books at this age. Again, you're doing those exclamatory words, and animal sounds are included in that. This book just goes through different animals and tells the animal name, and then tells the baby animal name, and then has a picture of a child. I would just call it a deer. You don't have to call it a fawn necessarily. Look at that deer. That deer can jump. It says leap. I understand it says leap, and it's a very nice vocabulary word, but we're just going to talk about jump when we're talking about 1-year-olds. So we say jump, and that girl can jump too. Look at that lizard. That lizard has his mouth open wide, and he can bounce, and we're going to bounce, kind of like jumping. Here's a porcupine. Look at that porcupine. He's so spiky, spike, spike, spike. And he can nibble on it. Yum, 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 yum. That's that exclamatory word. So you can just kind of interact with it and do those.
All right, Lauren, we can go back to the slides.
Thank you.
Awesome. I couldn't remember exactly the number you left off on. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
All right. So we are sliding on over to the wild ones, the 2 to 3-year-olds.
The wild ones. I love it. These are the fun ones. They should be using some more phrases, putting some words together like I want and mommy more. Their vocabulary should just be building and building and building. So these are the ones where you can use more of that broader language, like the bounce and the nibble. You should be able to understand about half of what they say, but they're still working on a lot of speech sounds.
And that is okay.
Yep.
Okay, so 2 to 3-year-olds, our hot tip is making sure that the child knows their part and does their part in the routine. So let them participate in the story. Like, don't push the button. My goodness, anytime I read that story, it is the biggest hit. So what else are we going to do? So we're going to give them 1 to 2 step instructions. So for us, that'd be like, take off your name tag and then place it on Mr. Bear. He's our bear that collects all the name tags. And these routines, just like this little quote down here, we're helping them link meaning to words. So we need to make sure that they understand words before they can say them, which is like,
that's just, well, that's like that earlier slide about the receptive versus the expressive. They need to understand those words receptively before they can say them out loud meaningfully.
Nice. Okay, so here's a list of songs, rhymes, books, and another bonus tip here. It's important for the child to, this is another good one. Going along with that, it's important for the child to sort the color versus knowing the name.
Yes.
Like people are always drilling those names, those colors, those concept words, but they don't actually know what they mean.
Yeah. And so again, that exactly goes back to that receptive versus expressive. You have to understand what that color word means. They have to be able to sort them to see the differences. So put all the reds here, put all the yellows here, and then they have to be able to receptively understand. You hold up a blue something and a yellow something and you say, which one is blue? And then they, identify that one. That's that receptive language versus saying, what color is this? What color is this? That's that expressive piece. So when they're this age, it doesn't matter if they know their colors, like offhand, the what's this, but if they start to receptively understand, super. So here's another one of those. I'm just going to read through or go through one quick book, Lauren. So this book is Walter's Wonderful Web. And this is a nice example because it's a nice spidery thing, nice for this time of the year. Oh yes. It has a lot of W sounds. So wah, and that's a nice speech sound for kids to be really developing and working on at this age. But I also like this one because you can, for this one, it says like when the wind blows, and you can have everybody like blow the wind, blow it around. But then when he's making his different spider webs, he makes them into different shapes. Again, for this age, those colors and those shapes, it doesn't matter if kids can identify them outright. You might say like, ooh, do you know what this shape is? And then if nobody says anything in like a millisecond, you can say that one's a triangle. And then you move on and you don't even need to talk about the shape anymore. Look, it's a triangle. Oh, and then whoosh went the wind and blew it away. Oh, bye-bye, web. All right, he made a new web. Oh, this one is a square. Look at that. And we kind of trace around it and then we move on. But then the wind came again and went whoosh and blew that away. So it goes through some things, but it also has that nice repetitive pattern that we like for this age so that kids can start to learn the pattern of the book and then they can participate along with it. And again, it has those nice like W sounds in it. So that's a good one.
All right, Lauren, we're ready for the slides again.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we're getting close to the end here. So we're going to kind of go through the 4 to 5 year olds real quick.
Oh, sorry. Those 4 to 5 year olds, those pre-kids, you should be able to understand most of what they say. There's going to be some sound errors, especially with that R sound. So they might say wabbit for rabbit, but their grammar should be improving. They should be able to understand some of those imaginary conditions. Like if you, instead of asking them an outright question, you could say, what if the wind didn't blow? What would happen? Or I hope the wind doesn't blow this time and ruin his web. And some of that early phonological awareness and those letter sounds.
All right, so in our 4 to 5 year old story times, we're focusing on kindergarten readiness. So just like Megan said, we're asking those open-ended questions. We're offering choices to encourage more language. We might be trying wordless picture books. We always include a letter of the day and we make the sound of the letter too and practice it. And then lots of rhyming activities. We'll still include those nursery rhymes and retelling a story. Okay, so here are some favorites. Oh, Down by the Bay, classic, love it. When we do crisscross applesauce, we change it up and include the letter A is on your back. So crisscross applesauce. Spiders crawling up your back. Cool breeze. Well, crisscross applesauce. The letter A is on your back. Cool breeze, tight squeeze that. So we change the beginning of it. And then the next part, bippity boppity boo, we always do that. Bippity boppity boo, there's a cat on my Choo, bippity boppity bello. There's the cat on my, and then they have to sing this out.
Yeah.
And then a whole list of books there that would be great for a 4 to 5 year story time. All right, let's, ooh, yep, there it is.
Ooh, there's that one. We're gonna do
a new one.
Yeah, we're gonna do another one, Lauren. This is This Bus for Us, Kelly said, is a brand new book that just came out. And so this is a really nice one. This is the time where you can get some of those books that have the language with them and really read through that language. The rhyme schemes are really nice. This one has another one of those repetitive story kind of pieces to it. So is this the bus for us? Oh, our bus is blue. And this bus is this bus blue? No, this bus is red. And it's going to the, I wonder where that bus is going. It has a chicken and a horse and a goat and a cow. Where do you think that bus might be going? So kind of doing that, engaging things. This book goes through that. The buses are all different colors and they have different characters in them, so you can kind of guess where the bus might be going.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be a way to read some of the story, but also engage the kids in the story that you're doing. Thanks, Lauren.
Awesome. All right, and we are in the home stretch here. So here's a little slide about all ages or drop-in story times. The biggest thing I want to say is just don't stress because it's already stressful because you have literally no idea who's coming to an all ages or a drop-in. You don't know what ages, you don't know how many. You're already doing so much in your story time that supports speech and you just don't even know it.
Yeah.
So try to keep some early literacy tips next to you. If you can pull them based on what ages you get, great. If not, you just include a whole range of things. So lap jogs, so those are like those bouncy rhymes, lap bounces. Grown-ups love them and older kids love them too.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I mean, I have seen a grown-up lifting like a 5-year-old for a lap jog before. So don't be afraid to use those. It just connects everything. And then we just have this one little chunk here about adapted story time. So we do an adapted story time at Brunswick for kids with autism or just anywhere on that neurodivergent range there. We just wanted to kind of touch that if you're doing an adapted story time, some of the things that we like to do include Beanie Babies, pop-up books. Some kids are sensory avoidant and sensory seeking. So sometimes they like having stuff to hold on to and sometimes that's too much for them. So just be aware that there are different ranges there, and then we always clear the room of anything.
Yeah, and I think you guys have had them enough times too that you know who might be coming back, so you can kind of adapt it as you go along.
Yeah.
So try some and see what happens.
Okay, so that is the end of our presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We like to end on this with this great little quote here that you are welcome to read through.
It just basically talks about that, like, some people think that reading to a baby is about, learning the animals on the page and teaching them about the animals, but really it's teaching them about the concept of a book and how there's an object that has information in it. But really it's beyond that, and it's teaching them about how language works. And beyond that, it's really about teaching them human interaction. But ultimately, when you're reading to a child, it's really about love and teaching them that mama loves them and whoever's reading to them is important. So all those kinds of things happen when you're reading a book to a child.
Yeah.
So
mind blowing. The very last slide that we have on here is just a link to a bunch of resources that we like to use.
And our contact information was on that previous slide, and you can contact us or email us with any questions or anything. If you have any questions, type them in the chat. I don't know if Lauren has had some come up along the way.
We haven't had any questions yet. I think people were just really enthusiastic about all the story time sharing. I know I enjoyed it, even though I have never done youth services. I still enjoyed it. And then the Lisa Loeb reference, I'm like, if we're talking about nostalgia, Lisa Loeb. And I did check, her children's albums are on Spotify if you happen to use that instead of Amazon Music or Apple Music. So, all right, well, folks, we've got a great opportunity to ask questions of Kelly and Megan. So just type away in the chat. Remember, you can open the Collaborate panel by clicking on the purple arrows at the lower right-hand corner of the screen, then click on the chat bubble at the bottom. Or are there any, Kelly and Megan, while we're waiting, are there any experiences that you want to hear about from other public libraries? Anything that would interest you about what we might be doing differently in Kentucky, if we are doing anything different?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to know if you guys have had any of these questions come up, like if speech has come up in your story times, or if you've had parents or grandparents. I mean, we have so many grandparents coming in who are concerned about speech, especially after the pandemic. Or if, you know, there's anything that you do during story time that you're like, oh my gosh, yes, that supports speech. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add that this is a great topic. I see that you've linked to Saroj Goding. Several years ago, as part of KDLA's School Ready Libraries project that was funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, Saroj did some training for us. And I can't remember his name. It was really something. Last year for this conference, we had a puppeteer who came and really got into the techniques and how we used that in story time. So this is definitely a topic that's perennially popular with our library folks.
Yeah, I took a class with Saroj, and I went to one of her kindergarten readiness trainings as well. And I think she's retired now, but she's awesome. Her website still does have a lot of nice information on there. It was through Library Juice Academy that I took a class.
Yeah,
just on my own.
Sounds right. All right, well, it seems like folks are just soaking this in deeply. So we'll have, I'm sure, more questions later, and we'll have a lot more people who get to watch this recording, because we do have 3 rooms running simultaneously for this conference. Yes, Amy is very good at finding amazing presenters like you guys to come and share with us. So I just want to thank you again. Is there potentially a question? Okay, look, we have a comment from Brandy. We have had several questions about it, and a lot of times our families feel like they should be further than where they would fit in the milestones. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I feel like you run into that a lot when you do your home visiting.
Yeah, definitely when we're doing evaluations, or when I'm just talking to families in general. So yeah, sharing that CDC information about where their child should be. And I don't know about Kentucky, I'm guessing it's very similar, that when families go to pediatric appointments, usually there's some kind of screener milestones to meet. But yeah, keeping families, you know, maybe you bring up the CDC milestones if you're having specific age group ones, and you can say, like, we're doing this specific thing because we're working on whatever, you know, building that vocabulary, or, you know, using some short phrases, but having that available and kind of tucked in the back of your mind.
And I, you know, since I had a child with a speech delay, I always tell families too, like, hey, I'm a librarian and I read to her all the time and she still had a speech delay. Like, it's okay. Like, sometimes it just happens, and it's not because you're doing anything wrong. Sometimes you just need a little extra help, and they can have just a speech delay. It doesn't mean they're going to have it forever, or they have anything tied along with it.
Yeah.
I think they're pretty common now.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been coming for a long time, in the same way that, like, some kids walk a little bit later than other kids. It doesn't mean that it's a long-term thing. It's just that maybe they walk at like 14, 15 months instead of at
there's
9,
so much
10, 12 months.
Pressure online. Like, as a mom, when you go to Google, or mom or dad or whatever, you go to Google, like, why isn't my child talking? And then you get all these scary responses. So it's definitely a scary world out there, and sometimes people feel comfortable talking to the librarians about it.
Yeah. And like Jennifer Sullivan said, you know, kids under 3, like we talked about at the very beginning, refer them to that First Steps program if they feel like their kid might potentially have a delay, and they can, if they qualify, they can get some services. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that is a great note to end on. Thank you very much, Kelly and Megan, for everything you shared. I'm sure we'll be referring back to the recording and the slides at a later time. So thanks again to both you and for our audience this afternoon. And we hope you guys will stick around for some more kayak conference content.
All right,
Thank you so much, Lauren. Bye-bye.